Welcome back to Get Fit Guy. Coach Kevin Don here with episode 642. This week, I wanted to take some time to objectively clarify what strength training is. Well, as much as possible, because I've recently been reflecting upon Descartes and the notion that we cannot be sure anything exists outside of our own mind. So therefore, objectivity may be impossible and subjectivity inevitable, since my mind is everything. Existential crises aside, it becomes apparent quite quickly when one takes a stroll down Google Avenue browsing for strength programs that strength could be anything from a 500-pound deadlift to lifting a pint glass to your lips for reps. So let's make sure we're all on the same page so I stop getting emails saying that you play golf for strength training. I always like to look at questions like an onion. Not that I have any great passion for onion-based imagery, but everything has layers. You have to peel them all away to get to the first principle. That is a piece of information that cannot be broken down any further. We have to be reductionist. At one point in time, elements were elemental. But we now know that elements like gold, hydrogen, and adamantium, oh wait, that one's fictional, are made up of atoms. Atoms are made up of protons and neutrons, and those in turn are made up of quarks. Maybe at some point further out in the far, far away, quarks and gluons will be even further reduced. Everything we do in the gym can be reduced down to a first principle, and this includes strength. There are different types of strength, like isometric strength, speed strength, and absolute strength. And they all have something in common. And that is that they create force against a resistor. In some cases, the floor or the wall may be the resistor, other times a kettlebell or a barbell, but you're always creating force. So you should follow on from this, that for strength to increase over time, force must increase over time. This is why I've been saying that the barbell, followed by dumbbells and kettlebells, is king. This isn't because I personally love the feeling of cold steel crushing me top down into the floor, but because the barbell is incrementally loadable. It will also be incrementally loadable out into the future, way beyond my capacity to continue to incrementally load it. This incremental loading we can call training with intent. This is because it was an intentional training effect. If you go to Zumba and start to find it easier to pick up your grandchildren, this was accidental. A bit like some waves washing over your feet as you walk along the beach. You might enjoy the feeling, but it wasn't what you set out to do. Strength training is the opposite from this. It has intent. This accidental outcome is also called the novice effect, or the picking of low-hanging fruit. This novice effect, where detrained people or untrained people make improvements at metrics which are not being directly trained, is why so many programs are able to claim to be strength building. I looked at the UK National Health Service recommendations on strength training for older people. The number one thing on the list was carry your own grocery bags. Okay, but then what do we do when a novice adapts to this? How far out in the future can we incrementally load our grocery bags, and how large would the bags need to become to facilitate continued strength gains? Carrying groceries is not a strength program, but it is harder than sitting on your butt watching Maury Povich. So it does create some adaptive stress. Adaptive stress is how we all get stronger. An external stressor occurs, the body doesn't like said stress, and it adapts to ensure that it isn't stressed in the future by the same event. A bit like how the immune system works against the virus. The problem is that anything that isn't an actual strength training program soon reaches the point in time where it stops being a stress and adaptation ceases. It's at this point that stress must increase to drive further adaptation. Since strength is an adaptation to force production, then the force required to overcome the external stress must increase. This ongoing accumulation of exposure to ever-increasing stress means something else has to happen to be intentional and not accidental. That something is quantification. You absolutely must know how much force was produced last time so you can increase the force production this time. If the last time was doing the Zumba Latin dance mix, then what do you do this week? Do you dance the Latin dance mix a bit faster? Upgrade maybe to the Ibiza Classics Zumba mix? Basically, anything that doesn't have intentional, quantifiable increases in force production over time is not a strength training program. And that, my friends, is the first principle. Now on to a listener email. Love these. Please send more. Hey, Kevin. Long time, first time. Well, can you please suggest workouts, drills, or routines on how to improve basketball fitness? I'm in my early 30s, playing against guys in their early 20s, and I want to keep up. I have the same problem, my friend. I have no problem going for a 10-kilometer run, but when it comes to the stop-start of basketball, I get drained really fast. I know I would build fitness by playing pickup games and going to training, but basketball isn't as popular here where I live in Australia, and that isn't available. Thanks, Travis. Hi, Travis. Thank you for the email. Curious about what basketball fitness means, but I will do my best to give you a useful answer here. As I mentioned earlier in this episode, adaptations are intentional. Therefore, it's no surprise that running 10K does not carry over to basketball. One's really a steady state contraction. And the other one, as you mentioned, is stop and start. Basketball involves explosive contractions, like jumping and rapid directional changes. So we could call that agility. These are both aspects of strength. Jumping, you're creating maximal force against the ground. It's called ground reaction force. And agility is where you absorb a sudden force and then redirect it. Therefore, my answer here will be that strength training, broadly speaking, will improve basketball because the key elements outside of skill development are elements of strength. We know that they aren't aspects of aerobic fitness because your 10-kilometer running hasn't helped you. So my advice would be to add in a well-rounded strength program with accessory work tailored towards basketball. So you would do some squats and your deadlifts and your presses, but then accessory work would be things like sprints. Those sprints would have to be specific to the length of sprints that you would do in basketball, right? So there's no point in doing a 100-meter sprint because the court's not 100 meters long. Do some jumps and then make sure you're working on directional changes. You've got to be able to move forwards, backwards, and laterally. Things like speed ladders are super useful. Generally speaking, I do agree that you can gain fitness for a sport by doing the sport. But if we look at how sports people train, we find that this isn't really how they develop. Soccer players, for example, do not play 90-minute soccer matches for their midweek training. And strongman athletes don't max out doing events every single week. So pickup games, whilst good, are not training. They're performing because you're still trying to win. If you have a training question, you're looking for individual training program design, or just want to say hi, head over to the Get Fit Guy Facebook page or send me an email at getfitguy@quickanddirtytips.com. Get Fit Guy is a Quick and Dirty Tips podcast. Thanks to the team at Quick and Dirty Tips, Adam Cecil, Morgan Christensen, Holly Hutchins, and Davina Tomlin. I'm your host, Kevin Don. If you have a question for me, please feel free to send me a voicemail at 510-353-3104 or send me an email at getfitguy@quickanddirtytips.com. For more information about the show, visit quickanddirtytips.com or check out the show notes in your podcast app.